So I was working in the location-based industry beforehand, putting in websites for local governments essentially, and we were looking at better ways that location-based data could be served to people like you and I on a daily basis. And the big problem we found is that data was actually being siloed into place names or boundaries or postcode sectors and districts. And the problem with those is that they're actually limited to how people were organised historically. So usually for tax-based purposes on who owns which land and who you should pay tax to. And we've sort of grown up with these boundaries as a sort of historical legacy. And the data was being served like this because you could essentially fit sales teams around the areas and have controlled boundaries for people. And we thought actually, if you remove the place names and location from it, what is left? And actually it's the movement of people that today is a lot more fluid than it ever has been. So we wanted to develop a platform that actually mimicked the way people live their lives today, not the way that the UK was, or the world was historically organised. To begin with, we wanted to launch our own consumer-facing website operation. We quickly realised that that was a little bit too ambitious for what we were trying to do, try and do everything at once. So we quickly realised that actually there's already lots and lots of people out there with great location-based applications, websites and data, and that they could actually plug in and use our technology to make their searches and their user journey much more friendly to the user on a daily basis. Our algorithms, when they do what they do, in a very simplistic way, try and mimic exactly what a human being would do when travelling. So for example, when transferring between stations, we actually traverse each and every footpath, stairwell, and account for all of those differences that someone might actually interact. We don't use any direct line of sight, for example, between two stations. We always are constantly tuning the algorithms to make sure they completely mimic what a human would do, and that just increases all the variance that could happen, which is problematic because it will affect performance. So we're constantly balancing how fast we can get our system to work and how much it can reflect and be valuable to humans while they use it. So buses are actually notoriously the most difficult because they stop the most. So if you imagine a bus stopping, say, 25 times in a short period of time, we are actually calculating at each stop what you could do, and in the remaining time you have, what are the roadways and walkways around you or potential cycling opportunities, and then what are the connected bus routes, train routes, tram routes that are connected to those possible opportunities. So if you imagine at each sort of 2-minute stage within like a 35-40 minute travel time, there can be hundreds of thousands of permutations of possibilities around what you can actually do. So there's a huge amount of data coming in and a huge amount of processing happening in the background. It's very difficult to sort of get right because people behave differently. So and because you have sort of one system that's trying to account for all, you have to sort of ascertain averages and what people are most likely to do at different times of day. It's difficult in terms of trying to fathom what someone's interpretation of a travel time will be. We work in a world where we can never ever be 100% right. That's just impossible. We have travel time, not a time machine just yet, but we can't actually predict what a journey time will be in its 100% accuracy. What we can get is to a certain point where it's a lot more valuable to begin with than it was by searching by distance, which is the problem we were trying to solve originally. And now we're just trying to get as high as possible in the accuracy and the speed of our results. I think it comes down to a lot about someone's understanding of an area. So if you take someone that's been living in London for some time, they sort of get to this point of just wanting to get from A to B in the most quickest possible way and almost have complete disregard for everyone around them at certain rush hour points. Then you have people who are tourists and actually want to maybe see more of London, so they might take a bus route, for example, than a tube because it's a nicer view. I think they want to get from A to B in the shortest amount of time, but also the easiest amount of time as well. So you could, for example, change buses, 4 or 5 times and have a quicker route than changing it twice. But that's a lot of annoyance, and there's a lot more things that can go wrong as well. For example, the bus might be late, you might miss the connection. We can predict that you shouldn't miss the connection, but we don't know that the bus might have been held up by someone whose Oyster card didn't work and it's been delayed by 45 seconds as a result. So I think people are just mainly looking for the simplest way, and I sort of categorise the simplest way as being, yes, the fastest, but just the least impactful on them understanding what they need to do. I think it's odd because it's always correct. You know, if you say something is, if you draw a circle around you, the world, the shape of the earth doesn't change, thank God, too much, well, at all. So when you draw it, it is always sort of 3.4, 3.5 miles away, but the travel times will always change depending on time of day, congestion, if there is a service available, what service you would like to use. So travel time is a lot more accurate way of searching. I mean, when we built the solution, we knew, and we did lots of calculations to prove to ourselves that this was a worthwhile thing to pursue. The biggest factor we've come back when we've actually put this out into the real world is that in terms of conversions, when users actually search by time instead of distance, with our property clients, they're 300% more likely to become a customer than they are when they search by distance. And that is, for us, a huge indication that when users, people like you and I, are searching for stuff online that has a local intent, when it's actually searched by time, they're not having to worry about the location piece. They're having more, they can actually focus more on what they're trying to look for. And as a result, they have a higher engagement and therefore a higher conversion. So I believe our solution is better than searching by distance, and I think that our existing customers and the results they're getting speak a lot better than I could about that. Travel time on its own is never the one answer. It's not as if we have a full-blown solution that will get someone to either click on a property or a job, or it's never someone. No one really ever has a question that says travel time has solved this one bit. It's part of the whole process. So whether you're a council that's looking for inward investment and you're saying to a company, if you move here, we can use travel time through one of our GIS providers and say, well, you'll be more staff you can recruit in this area. You're going to be closer to your suppliers. They're the answers they're looking for, and travel time it's like a catalyst essentially to prove to someone that this is a better decision because you can understand the geography around an area a lot better than just saying it's distance or it's based in London or anything like that. I think cost has a lot to do with it. I think if you look at sort of the low-cost airlines that have existed for years now, people haven't always just looked at necessarily the amount of time that it would take something to get there, but also cost. So cost is one thing that we also factor into our searches as well. So let's say you were searching for a job or a property, we can figure out if you lived in this property or took this job, your sort of net income is going to be different as a result. I think people like to stay within a certain area for the tasks they do on a daily basis. The UK is a very well connected country. I mean, we work with Visit Britain to highlight this for tourists. So the fact that you could actually go into central London and then be in South Wales in 3 hours and be in the valleys in 3 hours, our technology highlights this and actually shows, it's not actually that far, but you get a much different experience. If you're in Florida, those journey times become a lot more different in terms of you have to go much further to actually find something different than what you're in already. So I think it's a balance really of the amount of time someone has, the amount of money they're about to spend or willing to spend, and also the different experience they're going to get when they're there. You might have things you have to travel to, but if you are just traveling for the sake of traveling, it depends on the geography in which you're traveling in, really. Yeah, I think very much. I think if you look, it's always obvious sort of look at London as a sort of prime example for this, and there's more sort of jobs in sort of central London and Greater London than there are arguably outside of London, and it's much easier for people to get a job and then commute in than it is to maybe potentially get a job around where they live. But people don't all want to live in central London. I live in N1, central London. I love living in London at the moment. I don't know if I'll live there forever, and I think if you did move, you'd still want to be in a very connected place. That then drives popularity because obviously England being England, you don't have that much space, and the property prices will go up simply because of a very simple supply and demand ratio, and one of those demand factors will be around the connectivity of that area, undoubtedly.